On the day I turned 19, my parents dropped a bomb on me. They told me I was adopted. But what they didn't know was that I'd already found out something much deeper, weeks before they ever opened their mouths. That morning, the air in the house was thick with the scent of vanilla cake. My mom had actually baked one herself, which was weird enough on its own. She never cooked. Not on holidays, not for special occasions. Never. So yeah, something was already off. They waited until the afternoon to tell me. I was still lounging around in my pajamas when my dad called me into the living room. He didn't meet my eyes. My mom, sitting there, just stared down at her hands, lips pressed into a hard line. I knew something was coming. My stomach sank before they even spoke. Dad told me to sit down. His voice was cold, the same tone he used when I broke something as a kid. I sat, trying to keep my face neutral. I'd learned a long time ago that showing emotion around them only made things worse. And then, just like that, they said it. Mom came right out with it, you were adopted. No emotions. No build-up. No hugs or tears. Just straight facts, like they were reading from a script. Dad added, we took you in when you were about 2. Your biological mom couldn't raise you. We did our best. I sat there frozen, unable to move. Then Mom looked up and said, like it was nothing, we think it's time you find your own way. You're an adult now. Then, without another word, Dad reached under the couch and slid a small duffel bag across the carpet. There's some money in there. A few clothes, he said, flatly. They'd arranged a place for me to stay, campus housing at Millbridge College. Until I could figure something out. On my birthday, they were literally pushing me out of the only home I'd ever known. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I stood up slowly and nodded. Thanks, I said, forcing a polite smile. They didn't see how tightly I gripped the strap of that bag. They missed the flash of something burning behind my eyes. Because what they had no clue about, what they couldn't even begin to suspect, was that I had already uncovered something. 3 weeks earlier, I had stumbled upon a letter. It was hidden deep in a hallway cabinet, stuffed behind a stack of old tax files. The envelope was addressed to someone named Marina Orlovska. But inside? Inside was a birth certificate. My name was on it. And Marina was listed as the mother. There was no mention of a father. That sent me on a deep dive. I looked her up online. I even spent hours at the public library, combing through ancient newspaper archives. And what I found, it rattled me to the core. I didn't tell a soul. Not yet. Marina wasn't some unfit mother who gave up her kid. She had been taken. Forced away. So when I stepped out that front door, leaving behind everything I'd ever known, I didn't feel like a discarded kid. I felt like I was on a mission. The campus housing at Millbridge College smelled like cleaning chemicals and sadness. That sharp, musty scent of a place people end up when there's nowhere else to go. I spent that first night with my back against the wall, clutching my bag like it was filled with gold. Truth is, all I had were 2 sets of clothes, some crumpled bills, and that envelope. But to me? That envelope meant everything. The next morning, I left before the sun even peeked over the horizon. The air was icy against my face as I walked. It took me an hour to get to the public library. It was my sanctuary, my only refuge from everything that had been unfolding. It was quiet. Safe. And more importantly, it had the archives. I slipped the reel I'd hidden in my locker last week into the microfilm machine and reread the same old article over and over again. Hoping, maybe foolishly, that this time the ending would change. But it never did. The headline screamed, Local Psychiatrist Marina Orlovska, Institutionalized After Whistleblower Claims Backfire. There was a picture, too, a young woman with fierce eyes and delicate features being led away in handcuffs. She didn't look scared. She looked furious. The article said Marina had accused a prominent local doctor, Dr. Victor Stanton, of abusing female patients and running unethical experiments at a shady medical clinic that had since been shut down. Of course, the doctor denied everything. A month after her accusations, Marina was declared mentally unstable and locked away in a psychiatric hospital, Cedar Hollow Asylum. No one followed up. No charges against him. Just silence. But here's the kicker, Stanton later became the face of the Stanton Wellness Foundation. And guess who was a regular donor? My adoptive dad. I remembered seeing letters from that place lying around the house, always brushed off as just another charity. Now, the pieces were starting to fall into place. I printed the article and carefully tucked it into the envelope. The librarian gave me a strange look, probably because my hands were trembling. Back at the campus housing at Millbridge College, I sat on the bed and opened my notebook. I wrote down everything I'd learned so far. Marina had been a licensed psychiatrist. She tried to expose a powerful man and paid the price. She gave birth to me while all that chaos was going on. And somehow, I ended up with a couple who had ties to that same man. That's not coincidence. That's a cover-up. That night, I lay awake, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as if it might start whispering secrets. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Marina. She was constantly on my mind, like a whisper I couldn't shake. Was she out there somewhere? Still alive? I had no idea, but I had to find out. I needed to see her. To hear her voice. But first, I had to figure out where the Cedar Hollow Asylum had gone, if it was even still around. The next morning, I started making calls, one after another. I reached out to public records offices, state mental health departments, pretty much anyone who might have a clue about what happened to the people who'd been housed at Cedar Hollow after it closed down. Most folks didn't even seem to know the place ever existed. But then I got lucky. One woman, she sounded older, had this gentle voice and a long pause after I asked. Said she'd get back to me. I didn't get my hopes up, but 2 hours later, my phone rang. There's a long-term care facility in North Pine, she told me softly. It's about 3 hours north. A number of former Cedar Hollow residents were relocated there, quietly, back in the late 90s. There was no official record. No list open to the public. But she assured me, some of those patients were still living there. I didn't press her on how she knew. I just scribbled down the name, North Pine Behavioral Institute. At least now, I had a direction. A place to go. Problem was, I didn't have a car. Barely had any money. And I had zero idea what I'd even find when I got there. I hadn't eaten anything in nearly a full day, not because I wasn't hungry, but because I literally couldn't afford to. The small stash of wrinkled bills my adoptive parents gave me had mostly gone to the campus housing and printing out documents at the library. At this point, even the change rattling around the bottoms of vending machines seemed like treasure. I sat outside the library, notebook open in my lap, doing the math and realizing just how far I was from having enough for a bus ticket. North Pine might as well have been across the country. I didn't want to steal. And begging? That wasn't me. But I needed answers, more than anything. That diner across the street had a sign in the window, help wanted. I hesitated. Then I got up and walked over. I asked to speak with the manager. Told him I'd clean whatever needed cleaning, scrub floors, wash dishes, anything he wanted. He looked me over, saw how tired I was, and after a pause said, "Be here at 6 tomorrow." I worked 5 straight days. Didn't talk to anyone much. Just kept my head down, my back sore, and my hands raw from the hot water and rough soap. But on the 6th morning, I left with exactly $125 in tips and wages. That was enough. The bus to North Pine was set to leave at 10:40 a.m. I didn't say a word to anyone at the campus housing. Just slipped out, tucked the envelope with Marina's story safely into my jacket, and walked to the terminal. The ride up felt like a dream. Towns rolled by, half empty, their streets still holding on to winter, even though it was already April. Frost clung to the sidewalks. Everything looked forgotten. North Pine Behavioral Institute sat at the end of a narrow road, up on a hill partly hidden by trees. It didn't look like a medical facility at all, more like a grand old house that had been left to fall apart. The paint was chipped. The sign barely readable. Inside, the front desk was manned by a tired-looking woman with half-moon glasses and a voice so dull it could have put you to sleep. She barely glanced up as I walked in. "I'm here to visit someone," I told her, trying to sound steadier than I felt. "Name?" she asked without emotion. "Marina Orlovska," I said. She paused. "Relation?" I hesitated for a second. "She's my mother." That got her attention. She looked at me closely. "She doesn't get visitors." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." She didn't say anything else, just picked up the phone, spoke quietly into the receiver, then nodded toward a hallway. "Second door on the left. Keep it short." The door creaked as I pushed it open, like I was stepping into another world. And there she was. Marina. She looked so small. Fragile, even. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her skin was pale like she hadn't been in the sun for years. She sat in a wooden chair by the window, hands resting perfectly in her lap, facing away from the door. She didn't move when I came in. "Marina," I said gently, my voice shaking. She slowly turned her head. Her eyes met mine. And in that single moment, something shifted. There was a flicker, recognition, maybe. Or pain. Maybe both. She didn't say anything. But she didn't look away either. I stepped forward, my heart thudding in my chest. "My name is Lily," I told her. "You had a daughter 19 years ago." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They told me you weren't capable. That you were dangerous. But I know what really happened. I know what you tried to do. I know what they did to you." She let out a quiet breath, almost like a sigh, and her posture changed, tensed. Her fingers curled into fists. "They still watch me," she whispered, so faint I had to lean in. "They think I don't remember. But I do." I froze. She remembered. But, who was they? Marina's eyes flicked toward the door, then drifted up to the corners of the ceiling. There weren't any visible cameras. But the way she looked at those spots, it was like she knew exactly where they used to be. And then she said something I'll never forget. Barely a whisper. "They recorded all our therapy sessions." "They said it was for research," Marina whispered, voice low and shaky. But that wasn't the truth. It was never about healing, it was about control. About creating psychological blueprints. She paused, clutching her own wrist tightly like she was trying to ground herself, keep from unraveling. "I saw things," she said, barely above a breath. "Heard things I shouldn't have. Things no one should ever hear." "Marina," I said softly, inching closer. "Who are they? Are you talking about the Stanton Foundation? Is it my father?" The moment I said that name, her whole body tensed. She blinked fast, like the name itself had hurt her physically. She slowly shook her head, not a no, more like someone refusing to let the truth fully take shape. "Your father," she whispered, still avoiding my eyes, "he wasn't supposed to adopt you. He wasn't even on the official list. But he made it happen anyway. Pulled strings. Closed your case file. Sealed everything." She looked like she might shatter. "I tried to fight it," she added. "But by that time I was already labeled a problem. Too loud. Too risky." I felt like the ground had tilted. My knees were unsteady, so I dropped into the chair beside her, trying to keep my voice even. "What were they doing, Marina? What was Stanton doing to those women?" Her face turned pale, and she bit her lower lip so hard it lost color. "They called it therapy," she said finally. "Experimental treatments. Isolation methods. Memory suppression protocols." "What?" I breathed, barely able to process it. "It started off as PTSD research," she explained, bitterly. "At least, that's what they told the oversight boards. But it morphed into something darker. They were testing drugs. Manipulating behaviors. She looked away. They used women who didn't have anyone to fight for them. Addicts. Troubled women. Wives that were too emotional for their husbands. And you? I asked, my voice cracking. I was trying to keep records, she said. I was young, believed in ethics. Thought accountability still mattered. I filed a formal report with the state licensing board. She looked straight at me now. A week later, I was placed on leave. Shortly after that, arrested. And then dumped in here. Her voice broke, and I saw the tears in her eyes, glistening but not falling. She had probably learned a long time ago not to let them fall. I begged them to let me see you, she said. When they told me you'd been adopted, I had no clue where, or with who. Then they brought me here. Labeled me a threat to myself. That was the end of it. Without a word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope, the one that held everything I had. I handed it to her gently. You don't have to keep wondering anymore, I said. She touched the papers like they were made of glass. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she said nothing for a while. Then finally, in a hushed voice, she spoke. You shouldn't have come. If they find out you're here. I don't care, I said sharply, louder than I intended. You're not insane. You never were. And I'm going to prove it. She grabbed my hand so suddenly I flinched. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Don't trust anyone in a badge or a white coat, she warned, eyes fierce. Not in this world. Then, footsteps. The sound echoed down the hall, slow and steady. Marina's entire body snapped into a rigid, practiced posture. Her expression turned blank, almost robotic. She folded her hands in her lap and stared out the window like I'd never been there at all. The door opened with a soft click. A nurse stepped in, giving me a tight-lipped smile. I'm sorry, she said. Visiting hours are over. I stood, heart racing. Marina didn't look at me again. As I passed the nurse, she leaned in just enough for me to hear her whisper, You're not the first to ask about her. But the last girl never came back. And just like that, the door closed behind me. The cold outside hit me like a slap. My breath turned to mist, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't just the weather. It was what I'd just seen, what I now knew. Marina wasn't a patient. She was a prisoner. I didn't go straight to the bus station. I found a bench beneath a bare oak tree and sat there, staring up at the decaying North Pine Behavioral Institute sign. My head was spinning. Someone else had come before me. Another girl had tried to peel back the curtain. And now she was gone. The nurse hadn't meant her words as a threat. But they felt like one all the same. Back in North Pine, I checked into the cheapest motel I could find. The wallpaper was peeling, the lock barely worked, but I didn't care. I couldn't sleep anyway. I spent the night glued to my screen, searching every online forum, every dusty corner of the internet, even weird Reddit threads. Anything that mentioned North Pine, Cedar Hollow, or women who'd simply vanished. But there was nothing. Not a single clue. It was like someone had scrubbed the past clean. I turned my attention to the name that kept haunting me, Stanton Foundation. I remembered those letters back at my father's house, tucked in between other papers like they didn't matter. I pulled up their website. It was pristine, glossy, full of stock photos and smiling women enjoying yoga retreats. Every word screamed healing and hope. A total lie. I dove into their financial reports, tax documents, nonprofit filings, anything public. And then I found something. A name. David Morgan. He had signed off on a document detailing the acquisition of research materials from Cedar Hollow, dated the same year it shut down. My heart stopped. Because David Morgan was my adoptive father. He wasn't just donating to that foundation. He was on the inside. A director. Part of the machine. He helped hide it all. Maybe he even had Marina committed. And then, he took me. I was never someone they rescued. I wasn't a symbol of kindness or second chances. I was a trophy. A reminder that they could ruin someone's life and claim their child without a second thought. The fury that bubbled up inside me was like nothing I'd ever felt. But beneath it was something colder. More dangerous. Fear. These people had real power. The kind that erased names. Silenced whistleblowers. The nurse at North Pine hadn't warned me out of kindness. She'd been telling me, as gently as she could, to disappear. But I wasn't going anywhere. What I needed was proof. I searched for North Pine staff records and found her name, Nurse Irene Hale. The one I saw that day. It took some effort, but I found her Facebook. Nothing too revealing. Just a bunch of cat pictures and a couple of liked posts. But one comment stood out. Someone had tagged her under a photo of a nursing conference and said, "Still pulling nights at North Pine?" Poor thing. That place is haunted. I messaged her. I figured she wouldn't reply, but I had to try. I told her who I was. That I'd met Marina. And that I needed help. An hour passed. Then another. Then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., a message came through. Meet me. Back entrance. Tomorrow night. Midnight. If anyone sees you, say you're lost. That night, the cold bit through my coat like I wasn't wearing anything at all. North Pine at midnight felt wrong. Like the building was holding its breath, watching. The parking lot was empty. No voices. Just shadows, long and shifting beneath the moon. I followed the gravel path around the back, boots crunching over broken stone and frost. And I kept going. The door had a plain sign that read maintenance only. Before I could even knock, it creaked open. Irene Hale stood there, still dressed in scrubs, her face drawn tight, her shoulders sagging like she hadn't had a good night's sleep in years. Up close, she looked older than I imagined, not because of age exactly, but like life had weighed her down. She looked like someone who'd carried too many secrets for too long. "You came," she said softly. I nodded. I had to. She stepped aside and motioned for me to follow. "Keep your voice down. Some of the cameras are busted, but not all of them." We moved fast through a narrow back hallway. The overhead lights buzzed and flickered as we passed. She led me through a tiny break room, then into a records room that smelled like dust and damp cardboard. Rows of old filing cabinets lined the walls. "I shouldn't be doing this," she murmured, unlocking a cabinet drawer with a small brass key. "But I saw what they did to your mother. And to the others." Her voice cracked with something that sounded like guilt. "When the last girl came asking questions," she continued, "I thought, maybe this time someone would actually do something." I stopped. Wait. The last girl? What happened to her? Irene pulled out a thick, worn file and handed it to me. Her name was Emma Lawson. Journalism student. Smart. Determined. She came asking about Marina, about the women who vanished after Cedar Hollow shut down. She brought court records, filed reports, real stuff. What happened to her? I asked, heart thudding. She came back a second time. The night after, her campus housing room got broken into. Laptop, gone. Notes, gone. Irene's eyes darkened. She told her roommate she felt like someone was following her. 2 days later, she disappeared. Police said she ran off on her own. "You don't believe that," I said. "No," Irene replied quietly. Emma wasn't scared of the truth. But she wasn't the kind to run either. I opened the file. It was thick with pages, most of them covered in cold, detached notes stamped with words like unfit. Paranoid. Delusional. None of that was real, Irene said, watching me closely. Your mother wasn't crazy. She was silenced. The day before they locked her away, she filed a formal complaint against Dr. Stanton. The very next day, she continued, they labeled her unstable and shut her up. I flipped deeper into the file and found a photocopied handwritten report. Signed at the bottom, Am Morlovska. It laid out shocking accusations, unauthorized drug testing, psychological experiments on patients who'd never given consent. All under Stanton's leadership. Why hasn't any of this come to light? I asked. Irene shook her head with a bitter laugh. The Stanton Foundation has deep pockets. They fund hospitals, universities, political campaigns. You try to go through the system? She looked me in the eyes. You disappear. I'm not going through the system, I said, tucking the report into my jacket. I'm going to tear their whole world down, just not from the inside. Irene hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. It's got internal communications. Patient records. Marina's notes. If you're serious, you'll need this. I'm serious, I said. Then don't come back here, she warned. If they catch you. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I slipped out the way I came, and something in me felt different. I wasn't just some scared girl chasing the truth anymore. Now I was a problem. And I was done being afraid. I didn't return to the motel. I couldn't risk using my name again, not after this. Instead, I found a quiet corner booth in a 24-hour diner 2 towns over and sat there all night with a lukewarm cup of coffee I could barely afford. I held the flash drive like it was a piece of live wire. Like it might burn me if I let go. I didn't have a laptop, only my phone, and there was no way I was plugging something like this into anything traceable. By noon the next day, I tracked down a second-hand electronics store and used what little cash I had left to buy a beat-up Chromebook. I took it to a public library, found a seat in the back where no one could see me, and powered it up. I held my breath as I plugged in the drive. It took a few minutes to load. Then the folders appeared. Patient logs. Experimental protocols. Foundation communications. Dr. vs. Private. Transfer records. Am Morlovska. My throat tightened. I clicked into the patient logs first. The language was cold, calculated. Nothing human about it. Notes on sedation trials. Behavioral rewiring. Regression techniques. Some entries ended with chilling summaries like, subject transferred for non-compliance, long-term detainment recommended. No names. Just case numbers. I opened the Foundation memos next. Many were digitally signed by David Morgan, my adoptive father. One memo read, Patient MO remains a reputational liability. Recommend continued containment. Status quo advised. Another flagged a media scare in 2009, handled. Then I saw it. Emma's name. Internal Activity Report, Lawson suggests potential breach. Monitor and escalate. They knew about Emma. They were watching her every move. And now they were probably watching mine. They let her get too close to the truth, and then they wiped her out. Erased her like she never existed. My fingers trembled as I opened the folder labeled Dr. vs. Private. There were dozens of video files. None of them had names. Just dates. I picked one at random, 2006. The screen flickered to life, grainy and dim. A woman sat strapped into a chair. Her speech was slurred, eyes glassy. Off-screen, a man spoke in a low, coaxing tone. Do you think we're here to harm you, Marina? The voice asked. It was familiar. Chilling. Smooth as glass, and just as cold. Stanton. No, Marina whispered, voice barely audible. You're helping me. Helping me forget. I slammed the laptop shut like it was burning my hands. That wasn't therapy. It was reprogramming. They weren't healing her. They were rewriting her. And I had no time to waste. I reached out to every independent journalist I could find. Subreddits, anonymous whistleblower boards, even obscure podcasts about government cover-ups. I uploaded the contents of the flash drive to a burner account and sent it out. Most didn't answer. But then a name popped up in one of the forums, Sarah Miller. She used to be a respected investigative reporter until she was let go for chasing a story about unethical psychiatric experiments in state-run facilities. Word was, she never stopped digging, even after the world stopped listening. I sent her a message. I have proof of sanctioned experiments on women. I have names. I have footage. I think Emma Lawson reached out to you. She disappeared. Please. I need your help. I expected nothing. But just an hour later, a reply came in, where are you? I've been waiting for this for 15 years. Sarah didn't live in a city. She lived way off-grid, in a cabin buried in the woods, 3 hours from anything with Wi-Fi and surrounded by trees that looked like they were keeping her secrets for her. Her voice on the phone was steady. Measured. No names. No license plates. Leave your phone in the glove box. I'll meet you outside. I did exactly what she said. When I pulled up, she was already on the porch, early 50s, wind-beaten face, eyes like flint. No small talk. No smiles. Inside, she locked the door behind me, opened a battered old laptop, and said, "Show me." I handed her the flash drive. She plugged it in and scrolled through the files like she already knew what to look for. No emotion, no gasps, just a slow, steady inhale when she saw Emma Lawson's name. She called me once, Sarah said quietly. Told me she felt like she was being watched. I told her to meet me in person. She never showed. She turned toward me, her expression hard. You know what you're doing, right? This isn't just risky. This is war. And these people? They already think they've won. I know, I said. But I'm not walking away. She opened one of the memos and nodded to herself. Yeah. This is real. The format, the phrasing, this is exactly how they write internal correspondence. You couldn't fake this if you tried. Then she clicked one of the video files. She watched in silence. Her jaw clenched. Not once did she look away. These go public, she said, her voice low, and someone's going down. But we have to be smart. One wrong move, and you disappear. Like Emma. Or worse, like Marina. Still breathing, but locked away. Sarah leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to make this too big to bury. We go wide. Trusted contacts. Lawyers. Former prosecutors. Whistleblower platforms. And when we release it, she said, eyes locked on mine. We release it everywhere. All at once. I nodded. But deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was about them. Marina. Emma. And me. This was about reclaiming something that had been stolen. Sarah didn't waste time. In less than 24 hours, the flash drive was duplicated 6 times and mailed to people all across the country, civil rights lawyers, ex-prosecutors, 2 underground podcasters, and a known whistleblower network. Each person got a separate password to unlock the files. Each password was sent via encrypted call. This is how you kill a beast, Sarah told me, her eyes sharp. You don't stab it. You starve it, of secrets. She started compiling a full report to go with the files. Every thread woven together, the documents, the memos, the video proof. She wrote through the night. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, just as dawn started to break, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. David Morgan. His voice came through calm. Measured. Like always. Not angry. Not panicked. Just, controlled. As if, even now, he believed he could shape what happened next. Lily, I know what you've been up to. We need to talk. You owe me that much. That was the voicemail. I stared at the screen like it might vanish if I waited long enough. My stomach twisted into knots. I didn't owe him anything. Sarah looked up from her laptop, concern written all over her face. "Don't go," she said quietly. But I had to. I needed to see him. Just once. Face to face. No screens. No filters. We agreed to meet at an old train station, mostly abandoned but still open enough that we'd have cameras, people, witnesses. I kept my distance, stayed near the edges. He wore that same beige coat, that same calm, fatherly smile, like the last few weeks hadn't even happened. "You've grown into a smart young woman," he said, like it was a compliment. "Don't," I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Don't stand there and act like you raised me out of love." His face twitched. The mask slipped, just for a second. "You think this was easy?" he said. "You think I wanted it to happen this way?" "No," I said flatly. "I think you wanted power. You wanted to own people. Control them." He paused, then gave a tiny nod. "Everything you've found, it's dangerous. Not just for me. For you. For Marina." "She's already paid," I said, locking eyes with him. "They all have." He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to do this. There's still time. You can stop it." I stood my ground. "It's already done." He froze. His face shifted, peeled back from calm to something colder, harsher. "This will ruin you too," he said, voice dropping to a hiss. "No," I whispered. "It'll set me free." Then I turned and walked away. I never looked back. 2 days later, the story broke wide open. It started with a podcast episode, raw audio, pulled straight from the files. You could hear Marina's voice. Slurred. Broken. Then came the articles, the document leaks, pages of scanned files with redacted names and chilling notes. Whistleblower statements. An exposé on Emma Lawson that named names. And then, the video. Marina, in that sterile room. Dazed, barely conscious. Her voice barely hers. People watched. And they listened. By the end of the week, #Cedar Hollow was trending everywhere. Within 10 days, the state attorney general launched a formal investigation. Subpoenas flew out. David Morgan. Dr. Victor Stanton. 3 other officials, all named in a class action lawsuit filed by the families of former patients. I hadn't expected the world to care. But it did. Sarah kept me hidden while the chaos unfolded. Reporters circled like vultures, but I stayed quiet. Still, my thoughts never strayed far from North Pine. "I have to get her out," I told Sarah one morning. "Before someone decides Marina's too dangerous to keep alive." Sarah made a single call. By sundown, we were in the car, heading back. North Pine didn't put up a fight. After the story broke, most of the staff panicked. Some had already walked out. The place was unraveling from the inside. Irene Hale was waiting when we arrived. She handed over a clipboard without a word. "She's sedated," she said softly. "But she's still responsive. You need to be quick." I found Marina where she always was, by the window, in that same chair. "Mom," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside her. "We're getting out of here." Her eyes were distant, foggy, but her hand lifted slowly and brushed my cheek. "You found me," she murmured. "I always would," I said, my voice cracking. "No matter what they did." We walked out together. No alarms. No one tried to stop us. Just the fading light and the sound of the wind through the trees. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of legal paperwork, therapy sessions, doctors, and guarded phone calls. Marina started treatment outside the system, safe, surrounded by people who believed her. The trial kept getting delayed, but it wasn't going away. Not this time. David Morgan never tried to contact me again. 3 months later, he was formally indicted. And Emma? Sarah didn't stop looking. 6 months after we leaked the files, a woman was found living under a new identity in a tiny Washington town. She was skittish, cautious, eyes always scanning the shadows. But she was alive. Her real name? Emma Lawson. I flew out to meet her. We sat for hours, just talking. Not about what we'd lost, but about what came next. What we were going to rebuild, together.